Thank you. Marc Morano with Climate Depot. I just want to say one thing on what Steve was talking about. That's how the climate community, the environmental community, builds consensus. Fire the nearly 50 scientists who may or may not dissent on your rules, and now the EPA can credibly say, we don't have a single scientist who disagrees with these regulations. And the media will say that, but they'll leave out the part that they fired all the ones that would potentially have a balanced opinion on it. I was going to start with a video. We're going to the UN Climate Summit in 2 weeks in Glasgow, Scotland. And I have this video. We're going to be now, for the first time ever, climate skeptics are going to be supporting, praising, and cheering Greta Thunberg on. And this is the reason. Let's play. This is part of the Morano Minute.
Thunberg is correct. Climate summits are all blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
From Washington, D.C., it's the Morano Minute with your host, Marc Morano.
It's not often that climate skeptics can wholeheartedly agree with teen climate activist Greta, but this is one of those times.
They've now had 30 years of blah, 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 and where has that led us?
Greta finally gets it. Blah, blah, blah is a perfect description of climate policies. The only thing these virtue-signaling world leaders in climate summits have produced is more CO2 emissions. So it appears Greta has finally arrived at the same conclusion as climate skeptics. Climate talk is just talk.
Blah, blah, blah.
If we really did face a climate emergency and we had to rely on the climate summits to save us, we would all be doomed.
How dare you?
For more information, visit climatedepot.com.
So our goal is to go into this summit and literally support that message. It follows on the heels of people like James Hansen, who's called the Paris Climate Agreement a fraud, of people like Naomi Wolf, the Clinton-Gore advisor, who's called the Green New Deal fascism. And also people like Michael Moore, who's come out in his film against green energy. So I believe we need to start building these alliances, and I have no problem supporting Greta, because she is now having her moment of clarity, realizing this whole process. If I could see the PowerPoint up. No PowerPoint? But I'm going to go through rapid fire today and give you an update on what's happening in Washington, D.C., and run through what's happened with how COVID-19 in March 2020 and the lockdowns have altered not only the political scene, but the climate debate as well. All right, this is not my PowerPoint. Okay. You did have it there. Okay. Anyway, when you're ready, let me know. All right, here we go. Great COVID climate reset. Here we go. That's my book, Green Fraud, with the foreword by Mark Stein. Okay, how many times do we have to save the planet? In Glasgow, we're going to hear all the same stuff, but we heard it all before. In Paris, 2015, Al Gore. Years from now, our grandchildren will reflect on humanity's moral courage. John Kerry, tremendous victory for a victory for the planet, for future generations. History is coming. In fact, history is here. Guess what happened a year later? We had to save the planet all over again. We failed. Senator Chuck Schumer blames the failure of, I thought we succeeded in Paris, but if we do more on climate, we'd have fewer of these hurricanes. They actually believe we can go meet in a United Nations summit and reduce hurricanes. This is Justin Trudeau. He didn't actually say it, but he may as well have. He probably did say it behind the scenes. Joe Manchin, Rolling Stone has announced, and Steve was talking about the reconciliation, the stimulus bill, the budget bill. He's announced he's against the climate portions, the electrical portions of that. Rolling Stone, Senator Joe Manchin has just cooked the planet. And let's take a look. He doesn't mean it metaphorically, he means it literally. But that's not enough. Bill McKibben, the climate activist, he gutted Biden's climate plan, Senator Manchin of West Virginia, the most consequential action ever taken by a senator. You'll be able to see the impact of Senator Manchin in the geologic record. Now, we saw Patrick Moore have those charts up of the history of the earth. We're now going to have Joe Manchin's picture on our current era, because that's going to be the new geologic record. This is what the climate activists tell the media, and this is what the media will repeat. They believe this stuff. And Rod Serling never said it, but it would have been a great episode of The Twilight Zone. Now this is Richard Lindzen, 2019, actually said, It's hard to imagine a better leverage point than carbon dioxide to assume control. It's essential to energy, essential to breathing. If you demonize it, gain control, you, so to speak, control everything. Well, here's the thing. You fast forward, they imagined it. I haven't talked to Richard Lindzen about his 2009 quote, but I think they did find something. Remember, Lindzen said it's hard to imagine a better leverage point than carbon dioxide. Well, I think a virus scare is a much better leverage point. They imagined it. Climate lockdowns, is this the future that environmentalists, climate activists want? Let's go. There are virus mutations. You've heard of Delta, Mu. Well, this is the most frightening one, and it's coming. Soros Gates-funded Professor Mariana Mazzucata of University College. The world may need to resort to climate lockdowns again, this time to tackle a climate emergency. Now, I had an argument with a Channel 4 UK reporter. She didn't actually say that. She was just saying that was a possible outcome. Well, to avoid it, we must overhaul our economic structures and do capitalism differently. So you see, we don't need a climate lockdown. We just have to do what they say or else. They're not lobbying for that. That's just a suggestion. We're flattening the coronavirus curve. We can flatten the climate curve too. This is the Washington Post. Just 2 weeks to flatten the climate temperature. That's it, 2 weeks and we'll go back to normal. Are you buying it? The Economist, countries should seize the moment to flatten the climate curve. UK Guardian, could COVID lockdowns have helped save the planet? Climate envoy John Kerry. I don't say this in a partisan way, but the parallels between COVID and climate are screaming at us. You could easily replace the words climate change with COVID-19. They were originally jealous of all the attention, and now they want to join in on the bandwagon. We had this, Justin Haskins had this, a rare opportunity to reimagine, reset the world. The world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects. We need a great reset. This is from the World Economic Forum in Davos. The Rob Emanuel philosophy of never let a crisis go to waste. They've been poised in wanting to do this, and they seized on COVID and had remarkable success. Canadian Prime Minister, the pandemic opportunity. We need to reimagine economic systems by building back better. This is kind of airy. This was I think it was a 2012 quote. I should have had it up here. But Ivo de Boer, the former head of the UN climate thing, shutting down the whole economy is the only way we can achieve the 2-degree temperature goal. He foresaw what they tried to do. Now, they ended up shutting down the global economy. I think CO2 emissions only went up, or reduced 7%, or reduced the rate of it 7%, but it didn't affect CO2 in the atmosphere. But this is something that was in their heads. Thinking the only way we could do this is shutting down the global economy. Bingo, they got to do that in 2020. The coronavirus next victim, capitalism. And look at the Michael Mann quote there. COVID-19 laid the fragility of the massive infrastructure we've created to maintain consumption. They're linking this, they're excited. Jane Fonda's famous quote was, COVID-19 was God's gift to the left. And that's how they're treating this. We must start planning for a permanent pandemic. They don't want this to go away. It's not 2 weeks to flatten the curve. They're continuing. Time magazine, the pandemic remade every corner of society. Now it's climate's turn. So if you love living in the world in the last year and a half, Time magazine thinks that was an awesome time because it was the greatest expanse of progressive government in the shortest amount of time that I can find anywhere. This is just incredible. Worldwide, once free Western democracies became beholden to an unelected bureaucracy. Senator Schumer urges Biden to declare a climate emergency. Remember, in New York State, they declared a gun was a health crisis emergency to go after gun confiscation. The White House has declared misinformation an emergency, essentially, and they're using it to collude with big tech and corporations to shut down free speech. Imagine what they could do if we have a federal climate emergency disaster. Imagine the EPA, what they could justify. Imagine how the courts won't probably do a darn thing to stop them, whatever regulation they want to pass. Climate lockdowns. The International Energy Agency's net zero report, this was, I believe, June of 2021, urges behavioral changes to fight climate change. A shift away from private car use, upper speed limits, thermostat controls, limits on hot water. This is the International Energy Agency basically laying out what sounds awfully like restrictions similar to COVID lockdowns. A UK-funded report in late 2019, Absolute Zero. This is for the United Kingdom. Stop flying, no new roads. These are all exact quotes. Airport closures, stop eating beef, lamb, stop doing anything that causes emissions. Regulate carbon dioxide, similar to asbestos. That's in the report. So what we exhale from our mouth, carbon dioxide, they want to now regulate as asbestos. These are major reports government-funded, university, international organizations. These are not obscure blogs or references. I just showed you Time Magazine. Okay. Marxism News Face study claims Americans need to cut energy use 90% to live in 664 square foot, fly once every 3 years, limit new clothing, plant-based diet. This was their vision. This was University of Leeds, published in June of 2021. So the whole financial flow of money in academic journals is now going to essentially, how can we treat climate and capitalize on this and come up with a version of a climate lockdown, which was their term, not climate skeptics. The Gates Soros-funded professors have used the phrase climate lockdown. New Zealand climate expert. This lady was on live TV. We pushes for climate lockdowns. We can do this next for climate. New Zealand, one of the hardest lockdown places. Diseases we have here in New Zealand, we can do this for climate. Why wouldn't we do this for other things? So here she is in her little bubble, unelected health bureaucrats sitting around. Why wouldn't we do this? This has been the greatest year and a half of our life. We're not letting this end. And unfortunately, weak Republicans, Democrats, literally cannot stand up to the public health bureaucracy, which is just about to start incorporating climate and keeping this party rolling for the unelected bureaucrats. People must make a declaration. This is the comparison between COVID climate. And under COVID, you have to make a declaration as to why you need to travel, as a proposal in UK. The proposed climate lockdown, you can't fly commercial unless it's morally justifiable. So you want to go to Florida, this is for a vacation. Nope, you had that 2 years ago. If it's for a funeral or a wedding, you could always watch the wedding online. You're going to have to justify to some government bureaucrat. The same way under a lockdown, you had to justify a backyard barbecue. Your neighbors could call if you had too many people. You could lose your utilities. If you go to the store, it has to be for essential services. You'd have a curfew. This is the world the progressive left has been seeking for decades, and it just happened like overnight. It was an amazing thing to watch. Climate is the greatest threat to global public health. Now, 230 medical journals, how can you dispute that? They declare COVID-19 response, quote, a template for a climate response. Do you see what's coming? This is not, the dark fringes of the internet. This is 230 medical journals this year announcing this, reported by in the mainstream media. The journal Nature, this was in August, I believe. COVID lockdowns are the key to begin, quote, personal carbon allowances, restrictions on individuals that were unthinkable only a year have, quote, left us more prepared to accept tracking and limitations to achieve a safer climate. It's all about your safety. You want an unsafe climate? Then we have to follow. These are the experts. Journal Nature is a prestigious scientific journal. Who are you to challenge it? You want to challenge it? Publish in the peer-reviewed journal. I don't want to hear your blog or comment or see any letters to the editors. You have to be a credentialed expert to oppose this and accepted by your fellow credentialed experts. Scientists warning on affluence. Study wealth harms the planet. Degrowth, eco-socialism, banning oversized car, ecofeminism, maximum income levels. This was a report, actually reported what's up with that, but it was in the journal Nature Communications, June of 2020, right at the height of all this lockdown. Affluent citizens of the world are responsible for most environmental impacts, propose far-reaching lifestyle. So everything just converged immediately. Once they realized they could do this for COVID, climate activists wanted to jump on the bandwagon. Lund University, halt climate change, we need ecological Leninism. Okay, a show of hands, how many does that sound good to? Ecological Leninism, okay. And not talking about John Leninism. State power should definitely be used to ban SUVs and private jets. One of the common themes, they're going after your diet. They want you to eat fake vegetable processed meat with multiple ingredients that even a CNN nutritionist said weren't healthy. They're going after particularly private vehicle ownership and, of course, flying travel. They're saying private jets here, but that's the first step to making airline travel, commercial, more expensive. British Medical Journal, prestigious British Medical Journal, I can't say that without saying prestigious, calls for meat dairy price hikes to fight climate change. Meat consumption for North America must fall 79%, substantially fewer journeys by car. Guess what? It'll be monitored by your local bureaucrat. This was, again, British Medical Journal, and this is all to achieve net zero by 2050. Climate state of emergency. When Tom Steyer was running, again, 2020, this is right as COVID-19 was breaking out of Wuhan, China, he laid out his plan for what I call a climate police state. I will use the executive emergency powers of the presidency. to tell companies how they can generate electricity, what kind of cars they can build, and on what schedule, what kind of buildings we're gonna have, and we're going to use and how we're gonna use our public lands. One guy running for president, major Democratic donor, major climate funder, this is his vision. This is the vision, excuse me, and was the vision of the powers that be before the COVID lockdowns. He wants to use it to literally be like a climate dictator. This is his words right before, as the COVID was spreading. This is what he announced. Anthony Fauci has jumped in on this. This was in August of 2020. COVID-19 is due to extreme backlashes from nature, not a lab in China, will require changes in human behavior. This is the words of Anthony Fauci and his co-author in an epidemiological journal. Changes in human behavior, other radical changes, rebuilding the infrastructure of human existence. How many of you want Anthony Fauci in charge of rebuilding the infrastructure of human existence? Do you see the appeal of this? What I'm trying to tell you is, wake up! This is Anthony Fauci taking a moment to walk away from COVID to say, hey, I'm ready to get involved in the climate battle and the environmental battle. Here I am. We need this is extreme backlash. They're rewriting history to claim that this is the cause of a virus. Should we give up flying for the sake of the climate? This was the BBC earlier this year. France earlier this year looking at banning domestic flights where trains are available. This is all part of that limiting travel, making it more expensive, forcing you into city buses and train travel. People must explain the reason to travel under new British border. That's a COVID regulation, but as we've already said, they want to do that with a climate as well, limit you. Pierre Gosselin, who runs No Trick Zones. The USA is morphing into communist East Germany. Back then, citizens required to apply for permission to travel abroad. And that's literally what we're dealing with COVID. They want to make this happen with climate. Now, you want to go spend money. You want to go out to a nice restaurant. Wait a minute. MasterCard and the United Nations have joined forces. A new CO2 monitoring credit card will enable tracking of your carbon footprint on every purchase. Monitor and cut off spending when you hit your carbon max. This is the new reality. And by the way, it's voluntary. You don't like it, you don't have to do it. But just remember, General Flynn, President Trump's former national security advisor, had his visa revoked because they didn't like his politics. Candace Owen, who's against COVID lockdowns, was refused a COVID test because they didn't like her opposition to lockdowns. This is frightening. United Nations colluding with corporate credit cards to monitor your personal card. Imagine that. You want to go get gas for your car. Hey, you've already hit your limit. Your card shuts off. You know who loves this? World Economic Forum. Well, many of us are aware we need to reduce our carbon footprint. Keeping a tab is difficult. This new credit card monitors and cuts off spending. This is what we're facing. This is what not only what they want, but what they're actually in the process of implementing. Another company, fight climate change with every swipe of your debit card. Monitors your personal sustainability score, plant a tree every time you make a purchase. Both of these are within the last 2 months. That's how rapid, fast, and quick this is all happening. G7 leaders announced plans to phase out gasoline cars. This is from, I believe this is this year. It may have been last year, but this is part of their goals, talking about it. They're going to come in and dictate. Remember the Tom Steyer quote, I want to do this, we're going to make this happen. They're just coming in. Andrew Yang, who ran for Democrat nomination for president, current car ownership and usage models inefficient, bad for the environment. He proposed a constant roving fleet of rental electric cars that you could just order up. You don't need to own a car. Come on. That's wrong. It's bad for the climate. Canadian Magazine in July of this year, it's time to ban the sale of pickup trucks. They want to make pickup trucks only available for like a U-Haul truck. Few hours, you go to a Home Depot or Lowe's, you rent a truck. You don't need to own it. They're gas guzzlers. It's bad for the planet. You selfish, planet-killing monster. But remember, first they came for your energy, then your diet, then your SUV, and now houses pose more danger to climate than vehicles. So we have, as part of this, equity asset firms. They're going from single-family homes to single-family rentals. And this is another thing. People are now being priced out. Bill Gates, America's biggest farm owner. NBC News reported this. Again, everything I'm writing about, and I have a book coming out on the permanent pandemic and the permanent lockdown, the Great Reset, but I always cite the mainstream media sources. And NBC News reported about Bill Gates. He's not going to be the one in overalls, but Bill Gates is competing with family-run farms and the death through transfers and just outbidding and buying up tons of farmland which is an interesting proposition. Okay, next up, your kids. Is having a baby in 2021 pure environmental vandalism? How many people have engaged in pure environmental vandalism in the room? This is bad. You're going to be investigated. This is how it starts. Okay. Having children, the most destructive things you can do for the environment, say researchers. And again, these are PhD, credentialed expert researchers. You can't challenge them. Kids are cute, but are they really eco-friendly? Okay, climate death tolls. I'm going to go this fast. Climate change is a killer, but we don't acknowledge it on death certificates. Australian National University. There's a second component. They want to put climate as a pre-existing condition on death. Now, this is in the world of academia. Again, it's happening fast. That's a made-up certificate of death with the cause of death, climate change. Bill Gates has warned of this. The actual toll in death from climate change will be much, much, much greater than what we'd have with COVID-19. So Bill Gates, by the way, his model for the world is Australia. He thinks that Europe and the United States should be doing everything Australia's doing. They're handling COVID beautifully. It gives you an idea of where Bill Gates, his vision is. That's going to be the new CNN counter, crossing out coronavirus, putting in climate change as the cause of death. They're talking daily, weekly, annual death tolls. Once they start thinking like this. Now here's the catch. Obama administration, Department of Transportation, global warming can cause more deadly car crashes, cancer death. This is the American Cancer Journal, American Cancer Society. Climate change is already increasing cancer risk. It fretted over the carbon footprint of cancer care. Would you go to a doctor? Doctor, what are my chances? Well, I could give you the latest cancer treatment. You'd have a good success rate, but the carbon footprint is huge, and I'm sorry, your credit card here that you just gave me from MasterCard, it won't let me spend the money. You've already hit your max, sorry. But organ failure, Gore's warned that every organ system can be affected by climate change. So let's review this. If you die from cancer, in a car accident, or of organ failure, you could be a climate change death statistic. The reality, of course, destroys this claim. Anthony Watts had a chart up, dropped 99% climate-related deaths since 1920. But yet they want us to believe that there's going to be this mass death toll coming from climate change. Fair sells, says CNN director. This is where they're going. The media is now openly admitting in the private videos, the hidden video that they've released, they're going to switch from COVID to climate. Climate change is the next big scare. Again, there's the death tolls on there. This is my ending. Keep calm and trust the experts. Remember, unless you have the credentials and unless you get into those little, elite peer-reviewed journals, you have no say in this. You are just a voice in the wilderness. New York Times, critical thinking leads to misinformation. This is earlier this year. Don't go down the rabbit hole of critical thinking. Critical thinking, as we're taught to do it, isn't helping in the fight against misinformation. Stop critical thinking. Forbes, you must not do your own research when it comes to science. Trust the experts. Why would you do your own research? That includes everyone in this room. The UN has the experts. They've spoken. Why can't you just trust the experts? Questioning authority has become too much of a good thing, and it's killing people. Everyone in this room who wants to challenge the science claims of the United Nations, you are literally killing people. And finally, it's just time to give up on facts. Slate magazine, at least temporarily lay them down in favor of doing something more useful, a better weapon, emotion. So next time you're outraged, if you're a scientist in this room, let it go. Forget the facts, the data. Just go with your emotions. People care about the climate. They care about, saving people. Just go with emotions. Give up on facts. So the moment of clarity. Right now we're facing the European energy crisis. Bloomberg, global energy crisis is the first many in the clean power era. What does a global energy transmission mean? Energy crisis, gas shortages. This is an amazing article to come from the mainstream media, but the New York Times is terrified of this spin. Tom Friedman, a scary energy winter is coming. Don't blame the Greens. They're terrified that we're going to blame that green energy will be blamed for the coming energy crisis, which it rightly should be. New scientists blame fossil fuels, not renewables, for the UK energy crisis. Just like Texas, if only we had everything renewable, we never would have had a problem. So I got to finish here. But anyway, one-party state. Tom Friedman, years ago, praised China. One party can impose critically important policies needed to move a society forward. The UN climate chief, China's doing it right. It's able to implement it because it avoids legislative hurdles. They love China. Well, every agency, Biden is now a climate agency. They're bypassing. The last thing they want is an up or down vote in Congress on the Green New Deal. They don't want hearings. They don't want town hall. They don't want committee meetings. They want to do this to the administrative state with no prying eyes. They want to hide them in spending bills. Dictatorship versus democracy. We're at the crossroads. That's the Aldous Huxley quote. The perfect dictatorship has the appearance of democracy, but would be a prison without walls in which prisoners wouldn't even dream of escaping. It would be a system of slavery where the slaves would love their servitudes through consumption and entertainment. And that's part of the vision. Keep us all watching Netflix. They'll deliver food by drones. You don't need anything. You don't need to own anything. No critical thinking. Forget about facts. Just deal with emotion. So say no to the one-party state, COVID lockdowns, morphing into climate lockdowns. We can't allow this unelected experts to rule our lives. It'll make it, like, once you have presidents, senators, governors, if this unelected, deep administrative state gets their way, and there's no reason to think they're not going to. The Supreme Court's not stopping them, lower courts. It's just an incredible expansion. The only way is mass resistance. So CFAC.org is our company, and that's my first book. That's the movie we're showing later today. We deal with a lot of this in the movie. It opens with the COVID climate connection, and that's how you can reach me. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.